How to get a husband. Real quotes from a 1950s magazine. Have your car break down at strategic places. Always stumble when you walk into a room that he's in. Don't be afraid to associate with more attractive girls. They may have some leftovers. Stand in the corner and cry softly. Chances are he'll come over to find out what's wrong. If your mother is fat, tell him you take after your father. If he's fat too, tell him you're adopted.
Dorothy Gibson was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, earning a fortune as an actress and model. But on the 10th of April 1912, she boarded the Titanic. When the Titanic struck the iceberg, she escaped quickly in the first lifeboat launched, meaning she saw the ship sinking while it was still brightly illuminated. But just 1 month later, she was starring in Saved from the Titanic, a silent movie all about the disaster where she played herself, even wearing the same clothes she wore during the sinking. But filming the movie greatly affected Dorothy, who often broke down into tears on set. Despite it being so soon after the tragedy, the film was a huge hit, but sadly we'll never be able to watch it as every known copy was destroyed in a studio fire. Not long afterwards, Dorothy retired from filmmaking, with some reports suggesting that repeatedly reliving the disaster had become too much to bear. Survivor Eva Hart said her mother spent every night of the voyage awake with an overwhelming sense of dread, convinced that something terrible was going to happen. First-class passenger Edith Evans was said to have been warned by a fortune teller before the voyage to beware of water. Then, according to a worker, Titanic's resident cat Jenny gathered her kittens and left the ship before departure. Taking it as a bad omen, he chose not to sail either. In 1911, Violet Jessop was working as a stewardess aboard the RMS Olympic when it collided with a British warship. Although the damage was severe, the ship managed to stay afloat and return to port. But a year later, Violet was assigned to the RMS Titanic. On April 14th, 1912, Titanic struck an iceberg. As a crew member, Violet helped passengers board lifeboats before eventually being ordered into one herself. According to her memoirs, an officer handed her a baby just before the lifeboat was lowered away from the ship. She was one of the 706 people to survive. Then, 4 years later, Violet was working as a nurse aboard HMHS Britannic, which hit a German mine and began sinking rapidly. This time, the disaster was even more dramatic for Violet. Some lifeboats were sucked into the still spinning propellers, so Violet jumped from her lifeboat into the sea to avoid being pulled into them. But Violet survived for the third time, earning her the nickname Miss Unsinkable. When wealthy lawyer Charles Vance Miller died in 1926, he ordered that his fortune be awarded to whichever Toronto mother gave birth to the most children during the next decade. The prize was worth the equivalent of millions today, so women across the city were in fierce competition to win it. For the next 10 years, newspapers followed the contest obsessively, and the leading mothers became local celebrities. As the competition went on, courts were forced to decide bizarre questions like, do stillbirths count? Or what about children born outside of marriage? After 10 years of public fascination and legal battles, 4 women tied first place with 9 children each, and the fortune was split between them. During World War I, women started forming football teams which exploded in popularity. On Boxing Day 1920, over 53,000 fans packed into Goodison Park to watch the women's teams play. It was one of the biggest football crowds England had ever seen. But less than a year later, the FA banned women's football, saying that it was unsuitable for females, with doctors claiming the game could affect their fertility. The ban wasn't lifted until 1971. Had women's football not lost 50 years of progress, the Women's World Cup might have ended up a bigger tournament than the men's is today.
How to get a husband. Part 2. Learn to paint and set up your easel outside an engineering school. Wear a Band-Aid. People always ask what happened. Never let him believe your career is more important to you than marriage. Wear high heels most of the time. They're sexier, unless he happens to be shorter than you. Read the obituaries to find eligible widowers.